Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of American Soccer Quick Kicks. I'm your host, David Wright. The podcast project that I told you about last time that has kept me busy most of this year, that has wrapped up. We're done with that. I'll put a description in the show notes of this show in case you're interested. It's a Beatles versus Beach Boys podcast that I did with my son, but that has wrapped up now, and I hope to be bringing you more content on this channel. We do have something to talk about. The U.S. men's national team has hired a coach. We have now named Mauricio Pochettino as our new manager, and I'm just here to kind of give you my reaction and kind of my read of maybe what we should or should not expect going forward. I told you last time I talked to you, we had not fired Berhalter yet, but we had just been eliminated from the Copa America, and it seemed like it was time to make a change. And they did that. I was hesitant in that video just because of the idea of like, who are we going to get? Like, we don't have any competitive matches really left on our schedule between now and the World Cup. What can we get a top manager that's willing to take on this job this late in the cycle with no competitive matches on the calendar? And like, what's the caliber of coach we can get that would make it worth making this change? Because any change is going to set the program back at least temporarily until the new manager can get his feet and get his bearings, know what players he wants in his camps and stuff like that. Well, I mean, we have to give the U.S. soccer credit here. They swung for the fences. Mauricio Pochettino, I'm still trying with that name. He's a big name. I mean, that's a big swing. It's a big hire. It's a splashy hire for the United States. And I'm happy with that. I'm happy that they were willing to go that big just because it shows a statement of intent. It shows they're serious about being competitive, and it shows they were serious about trying to make an upgrade at that position. Pochettino, is that right? Is a Premier League coach. He has not had any experience coaching the international game, but he has coached in La Liga and Ligue 1. That's the Spanish top division and the French top division. In France, he was coaching PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. That's like the top club in France. He's also coached at, I think, Southampton and Tottenham Hotspurs and Chelsea. And he's one of the bigger names in the business in the world. So that is actually, I'm impressed. I'm kind of surprised that we were able to get a manager of that caliber, but this is a hire that we should be excited about. We absolutely should. It's a bold hire. It's a big swing from U.S. soccer. It's a big name. We should be proud to have him as our manager. It's good news. There's no way to look at this as bad news. This is fantastic, and I'm super excited about it. And we also need to not think that he's going to be the magic cure, okay? We need to like be realistic about the fact that our player pool is largely not going to change. That core player selection is probably going to remain the same. The question is, can he get more out of that group than Berhalter did? I tend to think that he will. But the challenge is going to be, unlike the club game, which is where he has all his experience is, you don't get your players every day. You get them for a couple of weeks per camp, several times a year. Like, you get them when you can. And so can he instill a coaching philosophy, a playing philosophy with the limited time he has while identifying what players he wants to bring in? And I think that's an important thing that I want to talk about is now I think every player should be on notice and no one's spot is secured. I say that our core selection is probably going to remain the same. You would think so. I can't imagine we have players better than that would make up the core. But here's the reality. A lot of those players, the big names I can name on our team, they're not getting a lot of minutes at their clubs. They're with big clubs in big leagues in Europe. They're not getting a lot of minutes. And Pochettino's going to want to see minutes. I mean, he's going to have this attitude of, if you're not playing for your club, why should you play for your country? I need to see what you can do. You need to be playing regularly and you need to be playing well. And I think there's also players like John Brooks, who got alienated during the Berhalter era. He could be back in play. He might get another call. I think there's a couple other players that would fit that description. So I think certainly the fringes, the players that sometimes are called and sometimes aren't, a lot of those guys are going to be getting new chances, and everybody should be motivated to do their best because they have to have the mentality of Every spot on the field is available. It's up for grabs right now. Everybody has to go out there and prove it. And I think maybe some of these core guys on Berhalter's team maybe got a little too comfortable. I mean, Berhalter had a group of players kind of as forming a council to help make disciplinary decisions. Like, I think this council of players voted to keep Brooks out. That could be a problem if Brooks comes back. I think they were involved in like how to handle Gio Reyna during the World Cup and that whole situation. And I think that kind of democracy is going to go away. I don't think you should expect that under Pochettino. And you know, that leads me to something else that I want to talk about, which is what did we see in Copa America? We saw Canada do better than the United States. Canada made it all the way to the semifinals, and they did it with a roster of players that are mostly playing in MLS. We had a roster of mostly European-based players that don't see a lot of minutes with their club. So the question is it better to be on the bench for a big club in a big league in Europe, or is it better to be on the field getting minutes in MLS? When you compare Canada and the United States and their results in the Copa America, you can make a case that it's better to be in MLS and playing regularly. We've heard rumors of Weston McKennie coming to Cincinnati. Tim Ream, although he probably is going to be too old to be considered for the World Cup, he's now come back and is playing for Charlotte. I saw an announcement where Josh Sargent is looking for a move back to MLS. Like, that's something that can happen. I believe St. Louis, which is his hometown, owns his first refusal rights, if I'm not mistaken about that. I'm starting to think, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, is this too much of a hot take, that maybe right now and is the time to get some of our big name players, get them back to MLS and get them minutes, get them playing on a regular basis, and maybe up to the World Cup. Maybe after the World Cup, they make them another move back to Europe. There are 2 transfer windows every year. The summer window just closed, but there is a January window that happens during the MLS offseason. And I would like to see, I think I would like to see, tell me if I'm off base, some of our bigger names. Okay, maybe that's Aronson, Reyna, McKinney, Adams. Can they come back to the MLS and get a lot of minutes and get sharper, be able to give better performances for the United States, and then use that World Cup as a showcase for themselves and get a move back to Europe after that if that's what they want? I think that might be better than having them continue to sit on the bench in Europe. Now, I know that they are training every day in a very high level environment, and there is value to that. But we see what happened in Copa America, and we know that Pochettino wants to see club minutes from the people he selects. And so I think this should be a motivating factor for everybody on our roster. It's going to be a shakeup. Anybody who thought their spot was secured, they need to reevaluate that, because there's a new coach that's going to be reevaluating that. Ultimately, I do think that we're still going to see that same core of players, but there should be more competition at every position. And I think there needs to be an emphasis, and I would not be surprised if Pochettino brings this emphasis to the table and tells the players, you need to be playing. If I'm going to pick you, I need to see what you're doing. And sitting on the bench is not impressive. So I'm going to be interested to see. I think I would like to see some of our players come back to MLS just for the next couple years, just between now and the World Cup. Tell me what you think about that. I want to know what you think. Again, big name hire. All right, this is one of the top names. We should be excited. There's no way this is bad news. But he's got to be able to implement what he wants to do with very limited time and access to the player pool, while also trying to evaluate exactly who he wants in the player pool to begin with. And, there's just you might think, oh, we're 2 years away. That's plenty of time. Not really. Not if you only get a few camps per year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The next games coming up are a pair of friendlies in September. We are hosting Canada. It's being managed by Jesse Marsh, who's an American MLS vet who got passed over for the U.S. job when they rehired Berhalter. And of course, They did better at Copa America than we did. That's going to be an interesting game to watch as we host Canada on September 7th. 3 days later, we're hosting New Zealand. And now those friendlies look a lot more interesting because that's going to be Pochettino's debut with the United States. And it's going to be very interesting to watch what his player selections are, what his rosters look like, what his camps look like, what type of formation he puts on the field. I think he typically likes a 4-2-3-1. We'll see how that affects player selection. And are we going to see some fringe players that have kind of gotten shuffled out? Are they going to get new chances? And I really am going to keep an eye on moves, on transfers for what clubs these players are playing for. And I just don't think it would be a terrible idea for them to come back to MLS where their minutes would be guaranteed. That's all I got now. I'm excited about the hire, but we are limited by the fact that he has limited access to the players, just a limited number of weeks per year, and he's starting at ground zero and trying to know who he even has at his disposal that he wants to bring in. So he doesn't have a lot of time to ramp up, and so we'll have to see what happens. And I will repeat again, my minimum expectation for a definition of success at the 2026 World Cup is going to be to reach the quarterfinals. They have, at the very least, this group, this generation of U.S. players need to reach the quarterfinals, need to make a quarterfinal appearance in the next World Cup in order for me to deem it a success. That's all I got. We have those U.S. friendlies coming up September 7th and September 10th. In the meantime, I hope you'll watch some soccer with me, and I'll talk to you next time.